Dying to be Stuckmocky, Chapter 17. Vira meets someone new. "It's a pity you weren't wearing your bracer," observed Fahyrjeon. "Oh, your knife wound isn't doing as well as I'd expected." Vira looked closely at the forearm that less than 24 hours earlier had been home to a long, bleeding slash. "I have no complaints. I think my hypoglycemia must have adversely affected my healing ability. I do apologise for misleading you about the likely outcome of your treatment yesterday. Perhaps it would be best to wait until I've replenished my blood sugar before I attempt another one." "I concur with that," said Mirrin. "I doubt witnessing your foul expectoration again would encourage my digestion." Vira looked at Mirrin with narrowed eyes. "You saw Fahyrjeon spit on my wound? I thought you were frozen." "I may have lacked the facility of movement, but I did not lack my vision. Or a sense of smell," responded Mirrin, wrinkling his nose at the memory. Vira suddenly remembered what she'd said while standing right in front of the frozen Mirrin, and she felt a stab of guilt. She looked at his face to see if she could detect his memory of her words. Mirren's eyes turned towards hers and locked with them. For a moment his seemed to show hurt, then they dissolved into a wry smile. "Fortunately, I am now dressed for the part of a dedicated diva, don't you agree?" Vira smiled ruefully and looked at her feet. "Sorry. If it's any consolation, I wouldn't describe you that way now, especially after the risk you took for me in the marketplace." Fahyrjeon's interest was piqued by this, but it said nothing. It did, however, look across at Mirrin with a softer expression. Vira noted the change of tone between the two adversaries and smiled to herself. "Let's eat. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, as my grandmother always says." "Your grandmother sounds like a wise and sensible person," Fahyrjeon said approvingly. The three sat down on a sunny patch of grass and shared out the morning's pilferage. "Are you sure you don't mind me having the melon all to myself?" asked Fahyrjeon. The other two generously insisted the Stuckmocky's need was greater than theirs, while they concentrated on the bread and cheese. A thought suddenly occurred to Vira. "What did you two decide last night while I was asleep? About where we're headed, I mean." "I continue to follow my heart to my family," rumbled Fahyrjeon, as it skillfully sliced open the melon with Mirren's sword. It then passed the sword to Mirrin, who sliced some bread and cheese, before wiping the blade clean on the grass and handing it back. Vira watched the transaction with great interest. How the world had changed since yesterday. "And I continue to keep a wary eye on this savage beast to ensure your safety, Vira," added Mirrin, seemingly without any irony. "Well, I appreciate that, Mirrin. But what are you going to do once we get to Stuckmockyville?" The question seemed to stall Mirrin for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "I will endeavour to forge a new career for myself in a nearby town. I have many skills besides thievery and killing," he added, flicking a quick glance at the Stuckmocky, whose obliviously contented face was once again shiny with juice and dotted with melon pips. "Oh, that sounds nice," said Vira doubtfully. "But I guess the first issue is how to discreetly cross this river. We'd start a very attention-grabbing stampede if Fahyrjeon tried to walk across the bridge with all that market day traffic. Are there any other bridges around here?" "I believe there is a ferry some way downriver," said Mirrin, "but I imagine that would be an even more challenging passage for a Stuckmocky. Perhaps the daytime is best used for slumber while we travel at night. There is no valid reason for a Stuckmocky to be walking the streets unfettered in the company of only two people." "Yes," sloped Fahyrjeon. "I was transported to Wyrdshofft in a cage on the back of a wagon. A very small cage, too, that only allowed me to sit, with my legs pulled up to my chest. I was in there for over a day." The Stuckmocky shifted uncomfortably at the memory. "But that's appalling!" cried Vira. She turned indignantly to Mirrin and hit him on his muscled upper arm. "Why are you people so cruel to these poor creatures?" Then she immediately knew the answer lay with her own passion for her video game. "Oh, sorry, it's not your fault. You were just as much a captive as Fahyrjeon, weren't you?" Mirrin made no reply and took another bite of bread and cheese. Vira threw her orange peel into a nearby bush as a huge yawn split Fahyrjeon's face. "Well, if you're going to spend the day sleeping, Fahyrjeon, perhaps I could clean you up a bit first. You're sticky all the way down your front, and you're starting to attract flies." She swatted a few away as she picked up a half-melon rind scooped clean of its flesh, rose to her feet, and started down the slope. "Where are you going, Vira?" asked Fahyrjeon. "You're not going in the river again, are you? I can't bear to watch if you are." Don't worry, I'm just going to fetch some water, she called over her shoulder. I can use my skirt to wipe you down a bit. Vira heard Fahyrjeon calling cautious words after her, but she ignored his fussing. When she reached the sandy edge of the river, she crouched in the shallows and rubbed her sticky hands in the water until they came clean. She then untied her skirt, which was mostly for decoration rather than modesty, and dunked it in the river. As she pulled it out, she turned to pick up the melon rind she left on the ground behind her, so she could scoop some water to take back with her. She could feel the skirt had snagged on something in the river, so she tugged at it while she concentrated on scooping water with her other hand. Suddenly she realised she was looking into a pair of eyes in the river, visible in glimpses between the dancing flashes of reflected morning sun. She stared into the strangely hypnotic eyes as they drew closer to her. She could hear her name being called at a great distance, but it gradually began to sound like a name belonging to someone else. Instead, she heard a woman's wonderfully emotion-rich voice. It seemed in her head, inviting her to take a cleansing, soothing swim. The voice somehow reminded her of someone very familiar, but she couldn't make the connection with who it was. It filled her with a desire and a passion she couldn't remember ever feeling before. A desire for what? To swim, the voice answered. To swim in the infinity of the eternal and become one with everything. Vira knew she wanted that more than she'd ever wanted anything in her life, and she leaned forward until her face dipped in the water. She was sure that when she needed oxygen, she could just open her lungs and suck it out of the water. The eyes were nowhere to be seen now, but she felt a hand close around her wrist, the same one assaulted less than an hour ago. But this time the touch felt cool and soothing and gentle, and it was very logical and necessary that it draw her arm into the water. Her other arm had already been gently pulled in by her grip on her skirt, and now her shoulders were joyously entering the realm of the infinite eternal. Abruptly, Vira felt her ankles grasped by powerful hands, not at all soothing, but urgent. The hands pulled vigorously, and Vira's shoulders emerged back into the sunlight. Another pull, and her head emerged. One more pull, and she felt those beautiful, glorious, underwater hands release their grasp. Vira lay on her face on the river bank and cried into the sand with torment, disappointment, and rage.